This girl experienced a lot of scary-ish in her house, and the why at the end is unsettling. So Josie lived in a small town outside of Manitoba, Canada. She grew up there in a house trailer, and she had never moved in her entire life. Ever since she was little, though, she had always had these paranormal experiences, like scratching at her door, and she did not have any animals. Constantly waking up with unexplained marks all over her body and hearing walking in her hallway. She also sometimes experienced sleep paralysis, and she would often smell smoke, but she didn't really think anything of it because she was little. So at the age of 10 years old, she starts to watch Sam and Colby, and she learns more about the paranormal. She starts thinking about everything that had happened to her, and so she started researching the paranormal, and she learned a lot. One night, she's about 13 years old, and she's sitting in her rec room, and there's windows all around her. She has all the curtains closed, and she's just chilling on the couch watching a show when bang, bang, bang! Someone was banging on the window. She jumped up so fast, she was terrified, and she just sprints to her parents' room. She's like, there's somebody outside banging on the window. So her dad, of course, is like startled, and he goes to check, and there's no one outside. And remember, they live in the middle of the country. They live in the middle of nowhere. So her dad's like, you're just hearing stuff. Go back to the couch. Just relax. So she is hesitant, but she goes back to the couch, and she's like, all right, I'm just gonna relax. She sits down. She starts watching TV when bang, bang, bang. But this time it did not stop. It's just continuous banging. She's sitting there frozen in fear. And finally she gets the courage to get up, and she just whips open the curtain. She said there was no wind outside. There was no trees by the house. It couldn't have been a branch. And as soon as she went to go touch the window, it just stopped. And she just sat there frozen, staring at the window, freaked out of her mind. After this, more things started happening. More sleep paralysis, more things that she would hear and see. Doors would slam in her face. She would hear kids running down the hallway, and then she would hear them laughing in the hallway. And then she started waking up with marks on her body that were worse than before. So one day, she's home alone, she's doing dishes, and there's a window right in front of the sink, and then there's a rec room. The rec room was an addition, so they had a window from the kitchen to the rec room, if that makes sense. And then another window in the rec room to the outside. So she's doing the dishes, everything's fine, and she glances up into the rec room, and she sees something in the rec room. There's a full body apparition sitting in the rec room in a rocking chair, rocking back and forth. So she jumps back, looks away out of fear, and at this point she's thinking, I've never even seen a shadow person outside of sleep paralysis. What is happening right now? She then glances back, and it's gone, but the chair is still rocking. She was so scared that she calls her friend. Now, her friend didn't believe her, but she didn't care. She knew what she saw. After this, she started wondering why her house was haunted. Nothing happened in the house to cause it. It wasn't even an old house trailer. And her mom thought that there was another house that used to be there because they used to walk around the bush and they would find like brick everywhere. And there was also like this strip of concrete in the ground behind their house. So it looked kind of like a foundation. Well, just this year, her and her mom are outside and they're just hanging out outside. And this guy walks by and he's like, wow, this house looks different. And her and her mom are like, how? And he's like, well, that wasn't there. The trees used to be there. He says there was a brick house right there. And he points to that exact spot where that strip of concrete was behind their trailer. So Josie looks at him and she's like, a house? And he's like, yeah, a nice house. And a nice family lived there. And Josie goes, well, what happened? And he's like, well, a family lived there, 3 kids and a happily married couple. There was a disagreement between the father and his brother. And one night the brother came and he boarded up the entire house on the outside, made sure no one could get out of the house. And let's just say the next day when the police got there, the only thing left was ashes. There was one family member that wasn't inside, and it was the oldest boy, and it was because he was at a sleepover. So Josie was in absolute shock, but finally understands why her house is haunted, and it's because the land is unfortunately haunted. So what did you guys think about that story? First of all, I just want to say that the whole rocking chair thing does not sit right with me. I would probably lose it if I saw that. Yeah, I don't think I would like it very much. You know what makes me think about that banging on the window is really sad. Because if you think about it, I can't say it, but if you think about it, like banging on the doors and the windows, that's sad. That's really sad. Obviously, she smelled smoke, so that is a sad story. That is a sad haunting, and it makes me wonder, when that happens, is it residual? Like, was she experiencing something residual? Because I hope she was, because I hope that family was able to pass on and go to a better place. I hope that they aren't there, like, stuck. So that's the only thing that makes me sad, is I really hope that they were able to pass on and she is experiencing a residual haunting, right? But what do you guys think happened here? Well, obviously we know what happened, but what is your theory of the story? I would love to hear it. Drop it in the comments. Drop all your comments, suggestions, and opinions below, but please, as always, be respectful.
Never ask your pets if they can talk or if they can understand you. This story scared the fuck out of me, and I don't even have pets. Anyway, that's the title of the story, and this guy why is the dog barking right now? Anyway, this guy's at home relaxing on the couch with his dog and cat, and he's watching TV, scrolling through his phone like we all normally do. He comes across this video that was like a fun kind of video, nothing creepy, nothing spooky, where it's like you should ask your pets if they can talk or if they can understand you. He don't even finish the video where he's like, oh, I'm gonna ask my pet. So he turns the TV off. The dog was on his bed. The cat was sitting right next to the dog, but on the couch. He looks at his pets, and instead of asking them, he says, I know you can talk and I know that you understand me. He was like, you guys can't trick me. He was saying it like funny. He thought it was gonna be like a little cute moment with his dog and cat. He says that, yeah, that moment went from what he thought was gonna be funny to what the fuck is going on right now. As soon as he said that, he's looking at his dog and cat, and he says that they both turn to look at each other, turn back to look at him, and he says that they both almost give like a smile. He was in shock. He had this like insane fear that just like jolted him, and he was like, the next thing that I did was start to play with them. He's like, the tension, this like them looking at him, he thinks that he saw them smiling, and he's like, what I decided to do next was play around with them, like, haha, yeah, like this is so fun, this is so funny. No, the fuck it was not. He ends up turning the TV back on because he's like, I just want the moment to come back to where it was before. He turns the TV on. He at this point is ignoring them. He says that they finally just go back to acting, you know, normal, whatever they were doing, and everything was fine. Of course it wasn't fine, because I wouldn't be telling you the story if everything was fine. He says that a few days passed, and unfortunately some weird things were happening. When he would go to bed at night, he would start hearing almost like a human walking inside of his home. Now this part is fucking crazy, but he claims that he also observed how his cat would talk, like call out to him when he was in his room. His dog started just walking on its hind legs, just normally about the house. I mean, that wouldn't necessarily be scary if he hadn't done what he had done. He claims that things would move and that he would lose some stuff. He would get home from work and he would walk into the cat and dog sitting on the couch just staring at him. They started just acting strange. They were doing things that they had not done before. And by this point, he did explain that he was scared that he thought his dog or cat might attack him. So there was one night where he is completely asleep and he is awoken to the sound of glass shattering on the ground. Obviously, he gets up all scared and he starts to see smoke inside of the house. He comes out of his bedroom and he realizes that his entire kitchen is up in flames. He has no idea what happened in the kitchen, but what he does see is that nearby, both his cat and dog are laughing as he comes out of the room. He said that it sounded like they were making fun of him, like they were just laughing. He runs outside of the house like half naked. He starts screaming at his neighbors, screaming at people to come out because the houses are close to each other, and if his house is on fire, it's gonna catch the next door's neighbors. So he's calling everybody to come out. People were calling the police, the firefighters, and they all started to show up because the flames were getting bigger and bigger. When the firefighters got there, obviously they tried to maintain the fire so that it doesn't go to the neighbors or anywhere else. He was actually still worried because he ends up telling them, like, my dog and my cat are inside the house. Like, he's still worried about his pets. They were able to get everything under control and they kind of saved like half of his house. Kind of goes towards the house and he tells the police and the firemen where exactly his pets were inside of the house. The firefighters tell him that when they entered, there was no animals in there. They didn't see any pets running around or anything like that. Time did pass and they also never found like skeletal remains of pets. I think that's how you call it. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but there was never a trace of those pets being burned inside of that house. However, he also never saw his pets again. He doesn't know if they maybe escaped or maybe they did burn with the house but they didn't find them, but yeah, he never saw his pets again after that. I'm not gonna lie, like, them laughing at me as they set the house on fire wouldn't want me to have these pets back again. So I don't know, maybe that was like a blessing in disguise. But he was really worried about his pets being on fire, so I can understand that. But what the fuck, dude, this whole story is fucking crazy. What do you guys think?
I've decided that my New Year's resolution will be to understand or unlock more of my psychic potential. And before you think I'm crazy, I would just like to remind you that I have a series called Spooky Scary Story Time, right? Which is where I share allegedly true listener submitted stories about the most creepy or unbelievable things that has ever happened to anybody. And these used to just be like a lot of paranormal situations, a lot of things that people just couldn't explain. But more and more I'm noticing this pattern of people writing in and saying, I remember flying as a child. I remember breathing underwater as a child. I know somebody who claims to be able to teleport, things like that. And not only that, but people write in and they start their emails by saying something like, just to start, have always known that I have gifts. And it's a pattern that I can't ignore. I was just looking for an email with a story to tell you guys tonight, and I noticed this pattern. And so just as a test, I typed into the search bar of my email psychic, and I had 6,482 emails mentioning the word psychic, either of people who claim that something happened to them because of a so-called psychic gift, or somebody claiming to be a psychic and know things. And look, I'm not talking about psychics like I can tell the future. I'm not talking about the TV psychics from like the 1990s who said, call in and I'll tell you all about your great grandmother. I'm not talking about the kinds of psychics that try to take advantage of people who just want answers. I'm talking about the types of abilities that may lay dormant in people. And before you discredit all this as like misinformation or wild conspiracy theory, I'd like to remind you that the US alphabet agencies have been for decades running all kinds of tests and experiments to see whether or not people had remote viewing capabilities, to see whether or not people could communicate telepathically or perceive otherwise unseen signals. Like, I really just don't think that everything is as black and white as we think it is. I really think that the human mind is capable of far more things than we even could ever think possible. 6,482 people, okay? And I've only had this series for 1 year. That can't be a coincidence. There are not that many people who are just making things up. My theory is that a lot of people think that they have some kind of dormant power or ability that they may just be too uncomfortable to admit out loud. And I think that Spooky Scary Storytime has sort of given people a platform to talk about these things, because I have always said, if you don't want to be named, like, just let me know and I can change your name for a story. I can make it anonymous. But this really caught my attention when I started talking about the GATE program, which was the Gifted and Talented Education program that ran in the US from like the late 80s, early 90s. And it was called different things in different areas, but basically there is a theory, not my theory, but there is a theory that this program, which taught children things like Morse code, did certain kinds of hearing tests that weren't regular hearing tests, taught kids different languages, asked them to do things like predict what was on the next page without seeing it. What a lot of people think that was the alphabet agencies testing this large group of children to see who may have certain abilities so that they could either do tests on them or recruit them. Out of almost everything I've talked about on this channel, be it the paranormal, the supernatural, unexplained phenomena, this intrigues me the most. And I'm currently in the process of trying to get my GATE workbooks. I also found this book, which is like a guide to psychic empowerment, and I'm just going to be reading it because I'm curious and I want to understand like the different types of so-called abilities. But I think more than any other topic that I've covered, this intrigues me the most, because I really, really believe that there is something to it. And I think that we just don't know about it yet. And I think, like a lot of things, the key to understanding it more is to maybe be able to have open and honest conversations with other people about things like this, instead of immediately dismissing them as crazy for thinking that they may have been able to breathe underwater as a child. Like, I don't know, I'm about to start asking all my friends, like, instead of talking about people or like things that we did, I'm gonna be like, so what's like your weirdest memory from a child? Like, tell me about that. And I want to have those conversations, and I encourage you to do the same. I've decided that my New Year's resolution will be to understand or unlock more of my psychic potential. And before you think I'm crazy, I would just like to remind you that I have a series called Spooky Scary Storytime, right? Which is where I share allegedly true listener submitted stories about the most creepy or unbelievable things that has ever happened to anybody. And these used to just be like a lot of paranormal situations, a lot of things that people just couldn't explain. But more and more, I'm noticing this pattern of people writing in and saying, I remember flying as a child. I remember breathing underwater as a child. I know somebody who claims to be able to teleport, things like that. And not only that, but people write in and they start their emails by saying something like, just to start, have always known that I have gifts. And it's a pattern that I can't ignore. I was just looking for an email with a story to tell you guys tonight, and I noticed this pattern. And so just as a test, I typed into the search bar of my email psychic, and I had 6,482 emails mentioning the word psychic, either of people who claim that something happened to them because of a so-called psychic gift, or somebody claiming to be a psychic and know things. And look, I'm not talking about psychics like I can tell the future. I'm not talking about the TV psychics from like the 1990s who said, call in and I'll tell you all about your great grandmother. I'm not talking about the kinds of psychics that try to take advantage of people who just want answers. I'm talking about the types of abilities that may lay dormant in people. And before you discredit all this as like misinformation or wild conspiracy theory, I'd like to remind you that the US alphabet agencies have been for decades running all kinds of tests and experiments to see whether or not people had remote viewing capabilities, to see whether or not people could communicate telepathically or perceive otherwise unseen signals. Like, I really just don't think that everything is as black and white as we think it is. I really think that the human mind is capable of far more things than we even could ever think possible. 6,482 people, okay? And I've only had this series for 1 year. That can't be a coincidence. There are not that many people who are just making things up. My theory is that a lot of people think that they have some kind of dormant power or ability that they may just be too uncomfortable to admit out loud. And I think that Spooky Scary Storytime has sort of given people a platform to talk about these things, because I have always said, if you don't want to be named, like, just let me know and I can change your name for a story. I can make it anonymous. But this really caught my attention when I started talking about the GATE program, which was the Gifted and Talented Education program that ran in the US from like the late 80s, early 90s. And it was called different things in different areas, but basically there is a theory, not my theory, but there is a theory that this program, which taught children things like Morse code, did certain kinds of hearing tests that weren't regular hearing tests, taught kids different languages, asked them to do things like predict what was on the next page without seeing it. What a lot of people think that was the alphabet agencies testing this large group of children to see who may have certain abilities so that they could either do tests on them or recruit them. Out of almost everything I've talked about on this channel, be it the paranormal, the supernatural, unexplained phenomena, this intrigues me the most. And I'm currently in the process of trying to get my GATE workbooks. I also found this book, which is like a guide to psychic empowerment. And I'm just going to be reading it because I'm curious and I want to understand like the different types of so-called abilities. But I think more than any other topic that I've covered, this intrigues me the most, because I really, really believe that there is something to it. And I think that we just don't know about it yet. And I think, like a lot of things, the key to understanding it more is to maybe be able to have open and honest conversations with other people about things like this, instead of immediately dismissing them as crazy for thinking that they may have been able to breathe underwater as a child. Like, I don't know, I'm about to start asking all my friends, like, instead of talking about people or like things that we did, I'm gonna be like, so what's like your weirdest memory from a child? Like, tell me about that. And I want to have those conversations, and I encourage you to do the same. This is really creepy, but someone wrote in and said that she's waking up after having vivid nightmares with scratches and marks on her body, and she's really scared. She doesn't know what to do. She's looking for advice or any words of encouragement from anyone who has dealt with this before, because she doesn't really know what she's dealing with. But she's actually my friend on a social media platform. Her name is Bonita. I hope someone can help her. But she said these dreams started pretty recently. The first one, she woke up in her dream in what seemed like a dark castle, the ground floor of a dark castle. Ahead of her, she sees a shadow figure that she can't really make out the face, but she sees the outline. It's huge. It has glowing red eyes. She starts to hear her daughter calling for her. So she's looking for her daughter. And as she comes into view, she hears something land behind her. She turns around and it's another dark shadow figure with glowing red eyes. She's running from this creature toward her daughter. As soon as she reaches her, both of these shadow figures pick her up by both arms and start dragging her away. She apparently was screaming in her sleep from this nightmare, and she had to be woken up. And when she wakes up, she realizes that both of her arms are very sore, and she looks at her arms and she realizes that she has bruises, which are in the exact same places that these shadow figures grabbed her in her sleep. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but these bruises lasted for days. A few weeks later, she has another dream. This dream starts with her running from something. She didn't know what it was, but she knew she was running toward a mirror, which was a portal to get away from whatever was chasing her. And she knew in her dream that if she jumped through the portal, she would be safe. So in her dream, she jumps through the portal, and as she does, this thing that was chasing her, she felt it scratch up her back. But she made it through the portal and immediately woke up. She's panting as she's waking up. She's like, that was horrible, whatever. She takes a shower. She gets out of the shower and she feels stinging on her back. So she looks in the mirror and realizes she has 3 claw marks scratched up her back. They were so deep that 2 of those scratches are still faintly visible to this day. Third dream was the most recent. In her dream, she's sitting in the living room when her boyfriend walks in the front door. She says, make sure you close the door so nothing gets in. He says, okay. He closes the door and he walks away. After he closes the door swings open. She thinks, what did that? And as she has that thought, she feels something grab her. Force that grabs her is invisible, but it grabs her by the upper arm and it drags her up the stairs into the bedroom, kicks the door open, and on the bed is her boyfriend watching TV. He doesn't seem to notice that this invisible force has dragged her into the room and put her on the floor at the foot of the bed. That I felt like I was screaming, but I wasn't making any noise in my dream. Eventually, I was able to kick my foot up and he saw me and came to pick me up. As he picked me up in my dream, I woke up, but when I woke up, my arm was burning. Not sure with that one. She didn't specify if there were any actual physical marks, but she said it hurt so bad that she couldn't brush her hair for a few days. And at the time of writing this email, she said it had been 3 weeks and her arm had just stopped hurting. She said these dreams don't happen often, but I swear every time they do, they get worse. And my goal with sharing this story is just to comment cruise and to see what everybody has to say. That I'll be in the comments in case anybody's had similar experiences. So let her know what you think is happening. If you have a spooky, scary story, one that you think nobody else would believe, send it in. We would love to hear it.
I used to work at a convent taking care of the nuns like a long time ago, like when I was really young. And I had a tendency to work on the memory care unit, which I loved. Okay, my little darlings over there. Anyways, I had this one patient that was just so lovely. She was an older nun, okay? She was sweet as could be. She was confused, had no idea what was going on, but she still loved all of us and was very excited to see us on a daily basis. Like, she didn't know who we were, but she knew that she liked us, right? And I loved working with her because for a nun, she had like a really cute wardrobe. And whenever I went, I would make sure to put her in like her Sunday best, like on a random day of the week. Give her a little necklace, put on matching socks, give her a pop of color here and there. Oh, just adored her. Okay, she was sweet as could be, but confused. So one time, getting all my residents to bed, her and I were like talking a little bit, in between my patients. So I put her to bed kind of close to the end of my night because we would just spend a little time together and I didn't want her getting out of bed and falling. So like the more she was kind of hanging out with me and sitting out with me, the better. I let her get a little tired before I tucked her in for the night. So anyways, we're getting tucked in for the night, right? Getting her tucked away. Take her to her room. I'm going to give her a little time to go to the ladies' room, right? So I get her settled and I walk away, right? I'm like by the door frame. Gonna give her some privacy. And I hear her say, "Oh, hi, where did you come from?" And I take a step forward because I'm going to be like, "Oh, sister, I'm here. I just put you in the ladies' room." And before I can even say anything, she goes, "Oh, my friend, you're back." And there is nobody else in this room, right? I know there's nobody else in this room because I was just in the room with this person. And I just put everybody else on the unit to bed. There ain't nobody else in that room. And she goes, "Are you a little boy or a little girl? Are you here to visit me? Have you been here long?" Something to the effect of that. And I'm like, "Oh, hell no." So I'm like, I'm going to walk into the room, right? Kind of peer around and see if I see anything. And as I'm walking to her, she keeps talking. And I'm like, I swear to God, if I see anything when I walk into this bathroom. So I walk into the bathroom and I say, "Sister, who are you talking to?" And she goes, "I'm talking to my friend." And I'm like, "What friend?" And I'm like, she better not say nothing creepy because if she does, like, I'm out of here. I'm just kidding. I would never leave my little sweetie. But she goes, "My friend." And then she points at the sink, like the ledge of the sink. Y'all, it was a fly. A fly landed. A fly landed on the countertop of the sink. And she was talking to it. And my soul left my body because I was convinced, absolutely convinced, that there was like a little girl or a little boy in her bathroom. I was like, "Sister, you almost gave me a heart attack." You never really know. You never really know with them. Especially patients with dementia. Like, you never really know. But that, my heart was going, like, that was something.
A lot of you have been following along the stories I've been telling about the search and rescue officer, Rob, and I got another one for you. This one is going to be the 5th one I'm posting, and it doesn't matter what order you watch them in, but you can go back and check out the others if you like. They're all right in a row. Also, trigger warning, this does involve a child and unfortunate circumstances. Rob says that missing kids cases are always the most heartbreaking. He says it doesn't matter the circumstances, it's never easy, and they always dread the ones that come up who didn't make it. Finding children who didn't make it is uncommon, but it does happen. He mentions that there are a lot of stories out there coming from other search and rescue officers that claim to have found children where they shouldn't have been or couldn't have been, but they do. And Rob says while he doesn't have a ton like that, he does have one specific story that he himself has dealt with. A mother and her 3 young children were out having a picnic in one of the parks that had a small lake. There's a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And she said she was watching everybody very closely. She said she never lets any of them out of her sight. She also notes that there was nobody else that she could see in the area. So once they're done, she packs up her things and they start making their walk back to the parking area. Rob says that this picnic area is about 2 miles into the woods, but it's on a very clearly marked, well-established trail. And it's like almost impossible to get lost on this thing unless you're purposely leaving the trail and going off into the woods, which obviously the mother said that did not happen. They're all walking down this trail and it's the mother with her children in front of her. So she has a perfect view of all 3 of her kids very close by. And then all of a sudden, she says that she heard the sound of something or someone coming up from behind her. So she whips around to see and nothing's there. And then in that like 3-4 seconds, she turns back around and her one son is gone. It was her 5-year-old that went missing, and she assumed maybe he just jumped off the trail to go pee or something. So she asks her other 2 children, where did he go? And both children told her that a big man with a scary face came out of the woods next to him, took him by the hand, and led him into the trees. She says she also noticed that her 2 kids were way too calm for this situation. They weren't upset at all, and she said that it even seemed like they had been drugged or something. Like they were acting really weird and fuzzy-headed about the whole thing, and continued to later on into the evening. So she's in full panic mode. She's freaking out, and she is searching everywhere and screaming his name. And she said at one point she even thinks she heard him call back to her, but she never could find out from where. And she's got these 2 other kids who are like half out of it, so she can't really just go running off into the woods to get the kid. She immediately calls Rob and his team, and they fly out there to help her look. Rob says that they spanned miles looking for this kid, and they found not one single trace of him being anywhere in those woods. He also said that they released the canines and they couldn't even pick up a trace of his scent. He also said, of course, there was some suspicion of the mother as they have to look into that, but she was clearly destroyed by this whole thing. Rob says that they searched for this child for weeks and eventually it just kind of fizzles out and they have to decide to stop. He said that there were also volunteers that were searching side by side, and those volunteers kept going even far past the official people searching for this child. And then one day they get a call on the radio that a body has been found and it needs to be recovered. They told them the location and they figured it can't be this kid. It's got to be a different kid because this is 15 miles away from where he went missing. But sure enough, it turns out it was this poor child. He said that the volunteers were spreading out far and wide just to see if maybe someone would have dumped them there, and they did end up getting to the base of a very steep and rocky cliffside. And if you look up, wedged up into the rocks was this poor kid. The person who found him actually ended up seeing him through binoculars as he was panning the area. Rob said it took their team over an hour to get this poor boy down because of how hard it was to even get there. And when they finally got this poor boy, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. First of all, this place was treacherous, and it was hard enough for adults to get to it with climbing gear. There is no way that a little boy could have gotten up there on his own. Second, this boy was missing his shoes, and the bottoms of his feet were completely clean. He also didn't have any scratch or dirt or debris or brush marks on his clothing or his skin. In other words, he wasn't drug up there by like an animal or something. He also says that the autopsy showed that he might have only been dead for like a day or 2. So for the month or over a month that he was missing, where was this child? He was alive right up until they found him. It ended up being determined that he passed away of exposure. They assumed that he would have probably froze to death the day or two before they found him. They cannot understand what the heck could have happened. Like, none of this makes any sense, and it's highly, highly disturbing. Now that we're all depressed, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned because I think there are a few more that I'm going to share from Rob. And if you haven't already, follow for more creepy story time. All right, guys, I got another one from Rob. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, go check the last 5 videos I posted. I've been doing, I guess, what I could call a series by now. They are creepy search and rescue stories from a man who works as a search and rescue officer in Pennsylvania. And Rob's got a few more after this one, so buckle up. So you'll find in one of the past stories, we go over those creepy staircases in the middle of the woods. Rob talks about one of his first experiences with those. One of Rob's first search and rescue missions was to find a 4-year-old child who got lost in the woods. Rob said this was one of those cases where you just knew you were going to find the kid because the dogs picked up the scent right away and they were flying to find this kid. And they did, and he was fine. So on their way back from finding this kid, Rob's trainer suggests that they take a little detour. Apparently, there was this hot spot for where many of the lost people around that area end up. There was a little dip in the land, and I guess it's easier when people are lost to go down than to climb, so they all kind of funnel into that area. So it's about an hour, a few miles in, and they finally arrive at the spot, and she's pointing out different spots in that area where people often are. While they're looking, Rob in the distance notices something, and it's got straight edges, and he's like, what the heck is that? That's definitely not something organic. So rather than explain it to him, she just sort of lets him wander over on his own, and she just kind of hangs back and observes. Rob mentions that this area is state protected, and that means there can be no residential or commercial construction of any kind on this property. So Rob gets to about 20 feet away from this, and he says that all the hair on the back of his neck stands up, chills everywhere. There is a staircase sitting there, right in the middle of nowhere. He says in any other context, this would be a totally benign occurrence, but the fact that it is in the middle of nowhere, and it even had a beige carpet on the stairs, not on the sides, on the stairs. He said it looked like it was almost like a glitch in reality, where there should have been a house there and it glitched out and the staircase was left. This staircase is also not old and falling apart and dilapidated like you could claim it was from an old home and it's the last thing to deteriorate. It was like a nicely preserved set of stairs. And he looks at his trainer and he's like, what the hell is this doing out here? And she goes, get used to it, rookie. You're going to find a lot of them in this job. So Rob's like intrigued and he starts to move forward towards this thing and she grabs him by the arm hard. And she goes, I wouldn't do that. Her grip remains and he's just staring at her dumbfounded. And she says again, you're gonna see them all the time, but do not go near them. Don't touch them. Don't go up to them. Just ignore them. And he wanted to start asking her more questions about it, but he could tell that the expression on her face said, I don't want to talk about this anymore. He says he dropped it and the subject never came up again during his training with her. He said, she was right though. About every 5th call Rob goes on, he says he finds a set of stairs. He says sometimes they're relatively close to the path, maybe like 2 or 3 miles. And other times they're like 20, 30, 40 miles out, literally in the middle of nowhere. And he always finds them on his broadest searches on the weekends. And the weird thing is, he says they are usually in good condition, although some do look pretty weathered. He says they are all different kinds, all different sizes, and then he remembers one that was very distinct. He said that the biggest one he ever saw looked like it came out of a turn-of-the-century mansion. He said this thing was at least 10 feet wide, and it stretched and arced up to almost 15 or 20 feet high. Just the stairs, though. No other remnants of any other part of a building. And he reiterates, anyone he's ever tried to talk about them to always act like, don't worry about it, no big deal, just don't go near it, don't go up them. So Rob says now that he has trainees of his own, he just kind of goes over the same spiel with them. But he doesn't quite understand it. He says that he really hopes someday he gets a better answer, but as of right now, it hasn't happened yet. I've seen some of you in the comments on the other video about this saying that it's just creepypasta, but I have seen so many stories from different people, all walks of life, talking about these staircases. So just because it was on creepypasta doesn't mean it can't have some truth to it. Let me know your thoughts, and don't forget to follow for more creepy story time.
This story was sent in to me by someone who lives in a haunted house. It says, so I would like to remain anonymous. Here's a little info on my house that is haunted. I live in Oregon with my wife and daughters. And the house we moved into, some of us started noticing weird things would happen. I believe our house is haunted by the spirit of a little girl. Now, when we first moved in, there was a few times where I'd be in the living room with my girls, and out of nowhere, we would hear what sounded like a door closing. And when we moved in, it was winter, so I know for a fact no window was open. And my kids were all right in front of me. I would just brush it off because I've had my fair share of hauntings or experiences. As time went on, with us living here, in the backyard we have like a shed or like workshop. And for some reason, we've always called it the barn. I would be back there, just relaxing or working on something. And a few times, I would be in there alone, and I would get those creepy feelings out of nowhere that something or someone was watching me, to the point where I would say, fuck this, and went back into the house. On a few occasions, I would hear someone knock on the door. Oh, that's spooky. Now, me thinking it's my wife or kids, I'd answered, what happened? And get no response. And when I would check, no one would be there. And at times, it was actually my wife and kids. They would respond or call my name. When I told my wife about it, she thought I was crazy because she does not really believe in paranormal. And one time, I had my uncle and cousins over in the workshop, and they heard the knocking too. I opened up the door thinking it was my oldest daughter, and no one was there. And she's not fast enough to run back in the house and close the sliding door. The little girl does not feel harmful, but the weird feeling me and few others have gotten being here, we don't know what it could be. My daughter has had an experience in her room. She thought her sister was in her closet because she heard a kid and called out for her sister. When she opened the door and seen no one was in there, she came out of her room kind of freaked out. My wife did have one experience. One night, she was in the kitchen doing dishes, and I was in the living room watching TV. And she came into the living room to ask where my daughter was. I told her in her room, asleep, and she swears she heard my daughter call out, Mom. And as I get up to go check, because she said, what if she passed by me and I didn't notice? So I said, okay. And when I checked, my kid was out, snoring, and she doesn't want to believe it's something paranormal to this day. There's been times where out of the corner of your eye, you'll see a little girl kind of moving around, not trying to scare us, and the knocking on the back workshop. Thank you for sharing your paranormal encounters. And don't worry, there's plenty of us that believe in the paranormal.
I have a Llorona story time. The person who submitted this story is so terrified by the events that took place on the night that she encountered La Llorona that she made me practically swear that I wasn't going to use her actual name. Which I never would. I would never break that trust. Like, if you guys want to be anonymous, you guys are going to be anonymous. I'm always going to make up names. We're going to call her Lily. In 2006, Lily decided to go visit her family in Mexico and stay at her aunt and uncle's house. Now, her aunt and uncle had 3 daughters that were around Lily's age, which was perfect. The whole day, Lily spent the day with her cousins just hanging out and like catching up. That night, it turned into a big slumber party. All the girls slept in the one room while the mom and dad went and slept in their bedroom. As the night progressed, the girls were doing your typical like slumber party stuff, just like hanging out, having fun, when the scary story like topic came up. And of course, they started talking about La Llorona. Each of the girls started to talk about all of like the local legends of La Llorona and how like many people in the neighborhood had heard La Llorona. This turned the whole atmosphere of the night into like a spooky atmosphere, which made them all want to watch the movie The Nun. After the movie ended, it was getting pretty late, and at this point the girls were actually pretty scared. Like, they were already scared because of like all of the Llorona stories, but like The Nun definitely put them on edge. As they were laying down trying to fall asleep, they start to hear the faint sound of a woman crying. At first they think that maybe they're just imagining it, they're just hearing things, but one by one each girl starts to kind of acknowledge the fact that they can each hear a woman crying. But it wasn't like your typical like wailing cry, it was like a mourning cry, like somebody who was like sobbing like uncontrollably, really thinking that maybe somebody was playing a prank on them or they were just hearing things. They then start to hear dogs howling, like the dogs howling from like the whole neighborhood. It was like the whole neighborhood woke up. This really put all 4 girls on alert, and they were like freaking out at this point. Like, we hear the crying, the dogs are howling, and then out of nowhere, it was almost like from a movie scene. Like the wind, like the weather just picks up, and the wind is like hitting their house. Like their whole house is shaking from how windy it is outside. One of Lily's cousins decides to kind of creep through one of like the cracks on the windowsill, and she looks underneath and she sees a woman standing there. The woman was standing across from their bedroom window, but it was almost as if the woman was floating. Like her legs weren't actually on the ground. It was like she was kind of floating like up and down. She had a long white dress, but it was all ragged and ripped. She had like long black hair that was half covering her face, and she even got a good look at her face. She said that her face looked like it wasn't even human. Like all of her features were like stretched out. Like it didn't look normal. They all start screaming. They run straight to the parents' room and they wake up the parents. When the parents wake up, the mom starts kind of consoling the girls, trying to get them to calm down, and she starts to pray with them. But the dad gets really angry. Not only did they wake him up, he thinks that there's somebody out there probably playing a prank, like really messing with them. So he's furious. He opens the front door, runs out there, and starts yelling and cursing and screaming and telling whoever it is to get out, to leave my house, like leave my family alone, like you don't belong here, and a bunch of other like words that I can't repeat. Just how everything started out of nowhere with the woman crying and the howling of the dogs and the wind, it just stopped. It was like dead silence. It was almost like somebody like clicked a switch and everything stopped. Even though everyone was relieved that like everything stopped and ended, they were all filled with this sense of dread that they couldn't shake like for days. This is the part that really scares Lily and why she made me swear not to say it was her who submitted the story. 10 days after that night, the dad, you know, the one that went out there yelling and screaming a la Llorona, he passed away in his sleep. Unexpectedly. He had no health issues. There was absolutely nothing wrong with him. He just died. Lily says that she can't prove anything, but she knows what she saw, and she also knows that he confronted her, which is something that you should never do.
Mac Miller lived a very, very short 26 years of life, and I think I just want to talk about this because the way that he passed, unfortunately, is not uncommon. And although it is overwhelmingly sad, I think it's so important to talk about so people know that this happens, that it's real, and that it can happen to anyone within seconds. According to witness statements, Mac Miller was last seen by his assistant on September 6th of 2018 at around 10:30 p.m. The following morning, September 7th at 11:41 a.m., his assistant called 911 after finding Mac Miller unresponsive in his bedroom at his house in California. He was pronounced deceased at the scene only 10 minutes after that 911 call. He was only 26 years old. Days prior, on September 4th of 2018 at approximately 11:07 p.m., 61 hours before he passed, he exchanged text messages with Cameron Pettit. Mac texting, "Yo," Cameron texting, "Yo, what's up?" Mac asked him about a specific substance, to which Cameron said he didn't have because he couldn't find any. Mac says, "All good," and then he asks about a different one. They go back and forth until Cameron brings up a different one, and he says, "I could get yellow and blues though." Mac says, "When can you get them?" Cameron says, "Probably in an hour or two. They are 30 each." Mac asks about 3 different kinds, and Cameron says he'll go pick them up and then take them to Mac at the studio that he was at. Cameron said he would be there at around 1 a.m. 1 hour passes, and at 12:56 p.m., Mac texts Cameron saying, "Yo, yo." 8 minutes later, he says, "Where are you at?" Then he texts him a question mark, but Cameron does not respond. A few minutes pass before Mac texts Mia Johansson at 1:12 in the morning saying, "Cameron is supposed to be pulling up, but he isn't answering." Mia says, "I don't know, hon." Mac asks if there's anyone else that could take the substances to him instead, and Mia says that she could send them with a girl. Mac says, "I need a few things," and Mia says, "I have everything, lol." They exchange messages from approximately 1:12 in the morning to 1:47 a.m. until they agree to send a girl with the stuff to meet Mac at the studio for a total of just over $1,000. Mia tells him that the girl was on her way and that she was 31 minutes away. Then at 2:02 in the morning, when the girl is already on her way, Cameron texts back saying, "Sorry, I got sidetracked, coming now." Mac says, "For sure." Cameron gets there at like 2:25 in the morning, and it's believed that the girl that Mia sent got there shortly after at like 2:30 a.m. So Mac got deliveries from both Cameron and the girl that Mia sent. Based on text messages, it sounds like the girl that was referred to as Carla was at the studio with Mac throughout the night and into the next morning until approximately 7 a.m. on September 5th. A day and a half later, Mac Miller was found by his assistant. His assistant typically woke him up at around 11:30 a.m. When he went to go wake him up that morning, he found him unresponsive. He gave him CPR until paramedics arrived, but it was too late. It was devastating, as you can imagine. The 911 call in itself is heartbreaking, and of course, Mac Miller's passing broke so many people's hearts. His cause of death was from mixing too many substances, and the manner of death was ruled as an accident. When the news broke that same day, Cameron reached out to a friend on Instagram when he was realizing that he was potentially about to be in a lot of trouble, saying hi. The person asked how he was doing. Cameron said, "Not great." The person said, "You're just paranoid. Nothing has happened yet." Cameron then says, "I'm gonna go off the grid, move to another country. What should my name be?" It didn't take long for
for authorities to identify Cameron, Mia, and Carla, but they needed to figure out who the person was that sold them and where they came from. Because some of the things that were sold to Mac were fake. He purchased what he thought was real, but he was sold fake substances that contained something else that they were not supposed to. And that something else was the reason why he passed. According to federal prosecutors, Mac had no idea about this, and it was ruled that he would not have passed if it wasn't for the contained in them. Authorities figured out that they came from Cameron, who purchased them from a 46-year-old man called Stephen Walter, and from Stephen they went to a man called Ryan, who then delivered them to Cameron. Stephen Walker had a lengthy criminal background, and the guy Ryan conveniently moved to Arizona very soon after Mac passed away. Some reports state that it was unclear if Cameron knew that what he's selling was fake, but text messages between him and Stephen definitely make it sound like they knew what they were doing. And worth it to note that less than 1 month after Mac Miller passed away, Cameron repurchased more of the same thing from Stephen and kept selling them throughout the following 10 months. An attorney later came out and said that the men allegedly continued selling what they were selling after Mac's passing with full knowledge of the risks their products posed to human life. Ultimately, 28-year-old Cameron Pettit, 46-year-old Stephen Walter, and 36-year-old Ryan Rebus were all arrested in September of 2019. They were facing 20 years to life in federal prison. Stephen was sentenced to 17 and a half years, Ryan was sentenced to 10 years, and Cameron served an unknown sentence and was released from prison on October 11th of 2024. I literally cannot even put into words to you guys how important it is to be safe and aware. The people that sell this stuff, they don't care about you. They're going to keep selling it over and over again, and they are the worst people in the world. I just literally do not know how these people that know they're selling this and know that people are passing away from it, I don't know how they sleep at night. But apart from that, mental health. If you guys are struggling, please reach out to friends and family members that care about you. It breaks my heart how often this happens. I literally can't say it without crying. When Mac Miller passed away, Ariana Grande called him 928 times. And it only feels right to end this video with what she wrote about him in 2019. I adored you from the day that I met you when I was 19, and I always will. I can't believe you aren't here anymore. I really can't wrap my head around it. We talked about this so many times. I'm so mad. I'm so sad. I don't know what to do. You were my dearest friend for so long, above anything else. I'm so sorry I couldn't fix or take your pain away. I really wanted to. The kindest, sweetest soul with demons he never reserved. I hope you're okay now. Rest. I just thought it was important to talk about this because it literally happens way too often. But I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, stay safe, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Have you ever seen something so scary to the point where even the government of a whole country don't like to mess with it? Well, if you haven't, welcome to the Kempton Park Hospital, aka the Ghost Hospital. This is a hospital built in 1978 in South Africa, okay? And at first, when it was built, everything was okay. I mean, everything was functioning like a normal hospital. Until 20 years later, where something happened. What happened is that the hospital stopped. Like, yes, out of nowhere, and for unknown reasons, the hospital closed. So, this pretty much means that it's abandoned now, and you know you're cooked when a hospital is abandoned. After a while, the windows and doors of this hospital were broken, and this is where some people like urban explorers managed to get in, and they saw stuff they couldn't explain. In some parts of the hospital, some people saw blood, mostly on walls and grounds. Here's a little example, but I can show you other images because it's way too shocking. Some people even said that sometimes doors open and close by themselves. And at night, every device that works with electricity starts flickering, even though this building is abandoned. Now, I'm sure that there is at least somebody who's watching this vid who's like, bro, why can't they just destroy it? And I agree with you. Why? Well, simply because for some reason the government doesn't want to. You know, instead of destroying it or basically rebuild it, the government decides to spend a whole lot of money, a huge amount of money to secure this area. Now, another question that pops up, why the fuck secure a place that's not even usable? Well, that's the whole mystery behind this area. Some people say that the government is spending money to secure this area because they fear something inside the hospital. Could be an information, something that happened inside the hospital, a tragedy, or basically something they don't want to reveal to everybody. You know what? Either way, haunted and abandoned hospitals are the worst. You can pay me like $1 million. I am not going there. Okay, that was a lie. See you on the next one.
Believe it or not, there are people who actually claim to have seen Santa Claus. And to them, he is very much real. Now, if Santa exists, then we have to ask, what is he? Some kind of spirit? Some kind of thing that is brought about by people believing in him? Or something else? Now, there was this man named Mike. Mike was from Tennessee. And he said his grandmother came over from Sweden when she was a young girl. And she brought with her a lot of Christmas traditions from Sweden. And he said one of the things he remembered was they had this figure that was sort of like Santa Claus. He was some kind of farm spirit that would protect your farm and bring you Christmas presents on Christmas Day. And he said one Christmas Eve, he was in his bedroom and he couldn't sleep because he was so excited for Christmas the next day. Now, he was just pacing back and forth in his bedroom when he glanced out the window and he sees this bright light coming from the forest. And he said to him it appeared like some kind of lantern. And as this thing came into focus, he could see some sort of red figure that was glowing. He noticed that this thing sort of weaved between the trees and then it just vanished. So he ran back to his bed and laid down. And he thought, no, it can't be. Like, is this like Santa? A couple minutes later, he hears the front door open. And then he starts to hear the shuffling of some very heavy footsteps, something walking into his house. So he gets up out of bed and he goes into the hallway. And the first thing he does is he looks into his parents' bedroom. And he can see that his mom and his dad are sleeping. They are snoring. And so he knows that it isn't them. So he makes his way down the hallway and he peers slightly around the corner. And he said by the fireplace, behind the tree, he could see two black boots. And they were sort of moving around. He said that's when he heard a deep voice, a man's voice, start singing an old Swedish song. So he said he ran back to his bedroom and he went to bed. The next morning he wakes up and he thinks, wow, that was a wild dream. Until he talks to his father, who says, hey, did you go outside last night? Because the front door was cracked open and there were a set of footprints leading all the way out to the woods. Except the weird thing was, the footprints stopped right as it reached the woodline. So what do you think? Do people really see Santa Claus?
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. Again, the necklace that helped to sponsor several of the angels off the angel tree at the nursing home. She's a beaut, Clark. This is a great Christmas present or a stocking stuffer because it's cute and it's cheap. Okay, it comes in a 2-pack.
The story is coming, just stay with me. I had to edit this video a little bit. This isn't an angel tree, but I'm trying to help somebody out. There's a GoFundMe on my profile of someone who is needing help, someone that I know personally. So to keep with the theme that we've been talking about, let's help her out. Click the link and it shares her story, and that's also where you can donate. The goal says 900, but they're shooting for 5,000 because they're trying to move. If you can't do a monetary donation, please like, share, and comment. That gets the video pushed out in the algorithm.
So let's help her out. Now onto the story. I've been a long time watcher on TikTok and I absolutely love your spooky story time. I just wanted to tell you all the crazy experiences that I had in my childhood apartment growing up. We love to hear it. Now I will preface this by saying my mom has lived in the same apartment complex since I was 4 and I'm 28 now. She's never moved complexes, just units, but throughout the whole time we've been there, all of the apartments have had their own spooky stuff going on. Imagine not being able to escape it. Fuck that. The one that I'm going to be discussing is just the most active. Growing up, I always saw small things, just spirits, never anything bad. Just spirits. No big deal. And I've always had a connection with the spiritual world. All of the women on my mom's side do. Now, once I started getting older, that's when the spirits would show themselves more and I'd see more sinister things. There was a point in time when we were there that for a good 5 or 6 years, we saw things constantly. That's the time period that I will be talking about. Our apartments were very haunted as is, built on a native burial ground and all that jazz, but it really picked up a lot when my mom's friend gave her this clown mask. You can go straight to hell. I'm seeing that and debating on reading the rest of the story because I don't fucks with clowns. Ugh. This mask just gave me the creeps. Clowns, period. Heebjeebs. Fuck that. It was a half mask, purple hair and purple and yellow clown makeup, and the rest was fully white with a little gray from the worn down effect. This mask was evil. I believe you. Point blank period. You say that it's got to do with clowns? Evil. There would be times we would go past my mother's room and hear circus music playing because of this mask. We would hear knocking noises only in my mother's room, though. Why did she have it? Why would you voluntarily want to accept a clown mask? I'm not understanding. One night we were in there just talking and we all started taking videos on our phones. That night we caught a video of a spirit shadow on my mom's window curtain. He was just sitting there, was wearing a top hat, and you could see him shaking his head. Later on that night I started taking a video of the clown mask. Why? Earlier in the night we had turned it so it was looking at the wall and now us. On the video I took, you could see every little accent on the mask's face. Every wrinkle, the mouth area, the eyes, and every bit of that started to turn purple on the inside of the mask. Just so we could still see the clown face while it was pointed at the wall, I later caught it on camera slowly turning all the way around so the clown could see us again. Burn it. Set that bitch on fire. The clown mask was thrown in the trash later that week. That's not good enough for me. Right in the dumpster on a Friday the 13th too. This is one of the craziest experiences that I've ever had, but I have many more if you'd like to hear more. Stop asking. Just send them. More stories in those apartments, in some of my apartments from the last few years, and many stories from my 10 years of working at Six Flags. Ooh, let's hear those too. I don't like it. I don't like clowns, period. Point blank, period. Fuck that. Fuck it. Fuck it all. The mask should have been burned. Burned. Okay, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you don't want to rate it, you don't have to. Give us your 2 cents in the comments, or don't. That's your prerogative. I'll see y'all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
Slenderman was supposed to be fiction. It was never meant to be real. I thought this case was dead and buried until somebody said to me the other day, have you seen this Slenderman girl escaped? It was the end of May 2014 in Wisconsin. 12-year-old Peyton Lutner was a lovely, sweet girl. She was a really happy girl and she wanted to be friends with everyone. And that would kind of end up being her downfall. A couple of years earlier at school, she'd seen a girl sat on her own. Now this was Morgan Geyser, and Peyton felt really sorry for her and she wanted to make friends with her. She was like, I'm gonna see if she's okay. Nobody should be sat on their own at lunchtime. And so a new friendship was born. The pair then made friends with another kind of outcast at school. This was Anissa Wire. Surely making friends with people is a nice thing to do, right? Surely they wouldn't betray you in the most sickening way possible. It felt like Morgan and Anissa kind of got super close and almost left Peyton out a little bit. So Peyton was really excited when they invited her over for a sleepover. She was excited for snacks, films, gossip, not being lured into the woods as a human sacrifice. The two girls had become obsessed with the creepy myth of Slenderman from creepypasta. I don't know if you guys know creepypasta, it certainly isn't the edible type. Slenderman was a totally fictional character, but the girls were kind of convinced that they needed to obey his wishes. The story goes that in order to please Slenderman, you basically have to sacrifice another human in the woods. You'd apparently lure children there to kill people. So like I said, summer 2024, the girls have this sleepover. Then the morning after, a cyclist is just minding his own business, cycling through the woods. He spotted something on the ground and he was like, oh my god, that looks like a body. It was a young girl and she was covered in blood. Peyton had been stabbed 19 times and had somehow, bless her, used all of her strength to drag herself closer to the road so hopefully she would be able to be rescued. Her so-called friends had lured her into the woods for apparently a game of hide and seek. They basically wanted to catch her unawares so they could attack her. The cyclist immediately obviously rang an ambulance and she was raced to hospital. By some miracle, she was able to get emergency surgery and she did survive. But this wasn't before a lengthy recovery process. Bless her. She was left with not only physical wounds but massive mental wounds. As for her attackers, they were found not long after covered in blood with a knife in their backpack. I mean, what do they genuinely think was going to happen here? Not long after this, Morgan was diagnosed with schizophrenia. It turned out her dad did also have this. She originally pleaded not guilty due to insanity, but then she took a plea deal and changed her plea. Basically agreed that she could just be housed in a mental health hospital. That's not the last we'd hear of Morgan. Lisa pleaded guilty, but only to attempted second-degree homicide, but she was actually found not guilty due to mental illness and was just ordered to spend 25 years in a mental health facility. I believe in 2021-ish she was released. Locals thought that they were safe from Morgan now that she was being held in a facility and obviously getting the help she needed. But after apparently making impressive progress, they actually allowed her to go to this kind of halfway house. This was under one condition, that she wore an ankle tag while she was there. But at the end of November this year, she escaped. She cut off her ankle tag and fled with this 40-something-year-old. Now, thankfully, she was captured the next day at a truck stop in Illinois. She didn't get very far. She was taken to Cook County Jail, and apparently her friend Charlie said the escape was her idea.
A home invasion in Pennsylvania would turn deadly. Hello, true crimers. This is the case of Brett Simmons. Viewer discretion is advised. It was September 25th, 2014, here in this home in Clay Township, Pennsylvania. Police were called because there was a home invasion and a shooting. When police arrive, they find the body of a 23-year-old young man, and his father had a gunshot wound as well. The victim was 23-year-old Brett Simmons. He had been shot twice in his back. He would be pronounced deceased at the scene. Brett's father had a gunshot wound to his chest. He was taken to the hospital, and he was able to survive. Brett James Simmons was born on May 29th, 1991, and I believe he was one of 3 kids. He had 2 brothers. He graduated high school in 2009, and then he would graduate from community college in 2014. He had gotten himself a degree in physical education. He was described as just a really nice kid who was super easy to get along with, that he wasn't a bad kid, but he did sell marijuana. And his dad would say that people would look at that and kind of just write him off as like a pot dealer and he's the scum of the earth. But that just wasn't the case. He was just a good kid who was trying to get ahead in life. According to the authorities, the intruders, there were 2 of them at least, entered the home through an unlocked door. One of Brett's brothers and his dad heard a commotion and then heard gunshots. His dad will rush out of the room where he can see into Brett's room. Brett is now lying face down on the ground. He also sees the 2 intruders. The father then rushes towards them. They get into an altercation where one of the individuals shoots the father in his chest. Brett's brother, also hearing the commotion, rushes out. He actually has a lamp in his hand at this point, and he smashes it on one of the intruders. But both intruders are able to leave the home. Brett's father and Brett's brother both got a decent look at the intruders, but it was also dark in the house because this happened overnight, and they weren't able to get any kind of descriptions of them, only saying that they looked to be very light-skinned men. What they found out was that Brett and his brother, they threw a party at their house about a week prior to this incident taking place. At that party, there was an altercation where a couple of people took out a knife, but then nothing ended up actually happening. So there is this theory that someone from that party who the altercation happened with possibly came back to the house with the intention of robbing Brett. But it could have been related to drugs and partially related to maybe some kind of retribution for what happened at the party. Ultimately, though, they believe that this was a targeted attack at Brett, that this was not some random home invasion. In the early goings on in the investigation, police had interviewed 200 or so people. Brett's dad actually threatened a person that he had heard had connections to Brett's murder, and his dad would end up being arrested for it. Can't blame him. I mean, if you found out someone killed your son, I kind of applaud their reaction. The dad wasn't convicted of any crimes or anything. The only clues the police have are the shell casings, and one of the intruders dropped a pair of glasses. But none of that has yielded any forensic evidence, at least not that they've announced publicly. There's a rumor that one person had confessed to being the getaway driver. That was looked into, but that investigative thing didn't really go anywhere. The police believe that there are people in that community who to this day know exactly what happened, and they know who killed Brett, but they are not coming forward out of fear or out of possible arrests. But someone, somewhere out there, has got to know the truth, and perhaps that someone is you. You can report information anonymously if you are afraid of people finding out who you are and getting retaliation against you. So if you have any information on this case, you are asked to please call 717-733-0965. You can also call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-322-1913.
Weird spooky Christmas stories. An ornament that threw itself. This story comes from a Reddit user who says that they remember this as clear as yesterday, even though it took place in Christmas of 1980. He said he was about 10 years old, hanging out in his neighbor's apartment. It was him, his little sister, and the neighbor girl. Both their moms were 2 doors down visiting, so the kids were just kind of on their own. He said they were watching a rebroadcast of Sugar Ray Leonard versus Roberto Duran No Mas fight. He said the 3 of them were sitting on the couch facing the front window, and the TV was off to the side. And right in front of the window was a Christmas tree, decorated, lit up, and maybe about 10 feet away. While watching the tree, he noticed something strange. One of the ornaments started to jiggle. He asked the other girls if they saw it, but they said no. He insisted. The ornament definitely moved, but they didn't believe him. So he got up and started walking towards the tree to prove it. And as he was walking towards it, the ornament jiggled again, this time more noticeably. He said when he got about 2 feet from it, it popped off the branch, flew towards him, and hit him on the chest before hitting the floor. No one else saw it, because the girls were just behind him staring at his back. So of course, they didn't believe him. But he remembers every second of it. He said he wasn't scared, but he was confused. He said he was just standing there in shock, holding the ornament, knowing exactly what he saw, even if nobody else did. See, at first I thought I was able to debunk this, and I was about to be like, oh, you live in an apartment complex, it's just jiggling, whatever. And then when he said that it came off the branch, I'm like, yeah, see, it's gonna fall. But then when he said that it shot and hit him in the chest, I'm like, okay, that's a little different. Now, if it like shot and hit him like in the foot, I'd be like, that's how gravity works. But in the chest, that's not how gravity works. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, or if any of you have had a scary experience like this, send it my way.